Welcome, everybody, to another edition of the CCC Weekly Podcast.
Hello.
Hello.
How's everybody doing around these three properly spaced tables?
That's right. That's going to be the new name of the podcast. 3 properly spaced tables.
Yes. They are properly spaced.
Well, they're properly spaced. I was not denying the
I guess it
spacing.
depends on who made proper.
I didn't do them, but
I
I'm
didn't
going to
either.
say they are properly
I
spaced.
feel good. I feel good about the people that did them.
Yeah.
Me too.
I don't know who they are.
I
but
I feel safe and comfortable.
Yes, yes.
I'm assuming Joel and maybe Nathan.
We were at work on this.
Yeah.
I didn't know if
Okay.
we want to get that behind the scenes, but yes, me and
All
Joel
right.
we're at work in the process.
There is not a whole huge podcast team.
Oh,
But as far as they know, there's a huge. We employ an entire crew.
all right.
The podcast team.
So here we are again. We got some topics to talk about, as always.
Yeah.
Whether they will be interesting remains to be seen. But we got some stuff. And, hey, update. We are at 956 subscribers.
Wow. Getting closer
How's that?
all the time.
We are inching towards 1,000. Because, we've been talking about this for about 4 weeks now.
Seems like too long.
We keep wanting it to happen.
We're
1,000.
begging now.
Super chat's close.
It's close.
Super
I
chat.
feel it coming.
Super chat.
We're going to reach that plateau. So,
And links. Super chat
Yes.
and links.
Ooh.
That's another feature I've learned. Super
Links.
chat and links.
wow. What will we do with that? So, all right.
There's a guy in high school who's really tall we call Link.
Mm.
I don't know why. I don't know why. I had to
Thanks
bring-
for bringing that up.
I don't know why I had to bring
Links.
that
I
up.
don't either. All right, so on to the topics. First one of today is a listener question.
Yeah.
So we have a
Thank you
listener
for sending
question.
that.
Thank you.
Yeah, we did get one this week, and it's a good one, but it's got multiple parts. There's
Oh.
lots of stuff in this question that we're gonna have to deal with.
Are the parts dependent on each other? Should we hear the whole question or answer them one at a time?
Why don't I read the whole thing,
All right.
and then I'll break it back down for you.
That
Ooh, I like that.
for one of us, that's better.
Break
For
it
me,
down.
that's better.
Okay.
I know that's better. For you,
Yeah.
Break it down.
but
Slow jam
Yeah.
style.
it's going to be hard for you to focus.
It is.
So I'll go back.
I'm
and
closing my eyes right now,
We'll
so
deal
I can
with
try
one
to
part
pay
at a time.
attention.
All right, so here's what the listener, watcher, thanks for sending in, wants to know. They want us to give a breakdown of how to read the Bible for beginners, and then they define what a beginner is. They say, I've read some verses my whole life, I've heard the stories since childhood, and it really hasn't stuck with me. So they want to know, first of all, how to read the Bible for a beginner. And then they go on to say, I find it hard to follow meanings of the messages and take away stuff from my everyday life. And then they go on to tell us, I just got myself an amplified study Bible, which we'll come back to and talk about in a minute. And then their final statement is, I know I am not at the place for a discipleship group yet. So let's start with the first part. Reading the Bible, if you're a beginner, you're just getting started, and you have a hard time understanding the Bible, what do you guys think are some key points to remember and how to go about doing that?
Translation you can understand.
Yep.
Yes, that's very
Start
important.
not with the Bible, but the New Testament. Start not with the whole New Testament, but the 4 books about Jesus.
Yes.
So pick any of those 4 books about Jesus. Get a really easy to understand translation.
And in particular, if you're wanting a specific book to start with, I think John or Mark, if you're going straight into
agree.
one of those.
Depends on your personality. I think
Yeah.
if you're a person who likes action, read Mark. Mark
Yes.
is
Yes,
action
It's
packed.
fast-paced.
Fast paced. You could legitimately read it in about an hour if you
Oh,
just
yeah.
sat down and read it straight through. It would not take you long. But
Yep.
but John, in lots of ways, at least to me, I always love it when we do. And I know we're going to talk about this later, so I'm not getting to it. When we're in our discipleship groups and we
Yes.
get back to John,
Yes.
in my group, we're just now back to John. There's a very personal feel, which obviously all the gospel accounts are either written by someone who walked with Jesus or was written by someone who was with somebody who was with Jesus. Anyway, the book of John has this very personal feel to it that I really like the way he writes. So I would say John or Mark or.
All right. And so, Ed, you mentioned a good translation. I would speak more to that as well. For me, my current favorite translation that I'm reading is the New Living Translation. I think it is a good balance of really good translation skills, but also written in a modern day kind of flow where it's very easy to understand. And I also think they do a good job of taking some little more difficult words or concepts, and they break them down into more easy to understand phrases that they don't use words that we don't use these days, I guess is the best way I'm saying. Like, sanctification, propitiation, which a lot of people don't use these days.
I don't know anybody that uses
I don't know
them
anybody
that's
that
not,
uses
that's
those.
not a preacher.
Not to say they're bad words,
I don't
but
know, I was at a cookout and someone said propitiation.
Did they
Yeah,
really?
we were talking about all the
In reference
sacrifices
to
we
the
were going to
barbecue?
make. Oh yeah, sure, we were going to sacrifice those barbecues.
nice.
Yeah.
Okay, well, anyway,
propitiating.
so go look that word up. But they take words like that, and then they break them down to what they actually mean in
Right.
common language. I like that. I think it's helpful. It's helpful for me, but it's definitely helpful for people, especially when you're first getting started.
And that tends to be what the three of us would most often teach out of. I used to be an NIV guy because it was the new translation when
was.
I was in college.
Me too.
But I ain't been in college for a day or two. And so
A few.
and they were still hanging on to. They said it was 7th grade language. I bet if you ran it through now, because the way our language is, it's a higher level than that.
Sure.
I agree.
I think the New Living is it's what I try to use most often to
Me
teach
too.
now, just for that reason. It uses more common language words. And a good translation should be common language. And I think
Yes.
people mistake that. They think, well, the Bible's supposed to be hard to understand.
No.
They were trying to write it to people who they wanted to understand it. They didn't. They weren't writing puzzles.
The New Testament is written in something called Koine Greek,
Right.
which is
Right.
called Street Greek at
That's
the
right.
time, which is the level of Greek that was spoken by the common folk.
That's
Right.
right.
So anytime you're taking a translation and trying to make it for common people, you're doing what the original writers were doing anyway.
That's
Right.
exactly right. I think that's I think most people think the Bible's supposed to be hard to understand. You get a good translation when most of it you do understand.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
At least you understand the words.
Yes.
Yes.
You should understand the words.
Enough to ask questions and to
Yeah.
get into it. But,
That's right.
Yeah, it doesn't leave you in the dust completely. So let's talk about that other statement. They said that they had started reading the Bible. Obviously, this person's trying to read, which is great.
Yeah, great.
But they've got what's called an amplified study Bible, and I just wanted to point that out because personally, and I'm not trying to offend your choice of Bible, but I don't think that's the best way to start.
No, I had also say that. Amplified by its nature, if you were to read, and I'm sure it tells you this in the beginning of it, it's taking every possible meaning of the Greek words and putting them all in the text, which doesn't make it more readable and it doesn't make it more understandable.
Right.
In fact, you wind up coming away. I've had people bring things to me and says the Bible says this. Well, the Bible doesn't say all those words.
No, they don't.
Right.
It doesn't say all those things.
Well, and even the original authors, when they would pen these words, they weren't penning them with the thought of, I want them to get every possible definition that this word has in all of history out of this one word that I'm writing. They had a specific target and purpose with every word. That's why it's important to translate it with the intention of the author in mind. And so that Bible particularly, as Ed said, that's not what it's going after. It's going for a really, I guess, wide breadth in understanding words instead of what the author actually intended.
Yeah.
Which I would imagine I'm sure there's a time and place for that somewhere. It's probably not for you because you said personally you're a beginner and you're trying to understand what the Bible is actually saying. I would not start there. So there's that. And then the final statement.
Well, and then let me
go
say
ahead.
one
Go
more
ahead.
thing about it. The other thing about every study Bible you should realize,
Oh, yeah.
and I don't know, a study Bible is a Bible with a commentary attached.
Yes,
Right.
That's
And
right.
so often people wind up reading the study part of it as being as authoritative because it's in their Bible as the words in the Bible. That study part off to the side, including the footnotes. I would tell you every Bible, and I don't mean the ones that say this wasn't originally included in the manuscript. I'm meaning the one that it says, now go look up this text, and now go look up this text. That is somebody telling you what they think you ought to look up, not the person who wrote the actual scripture telling you what they think you ought to go look at.
So you mean like John didn't put footnotes?
He
No.
did not
Oh,
put footnotes
dang.
into the thing.
Okay.
So you have to just be aware, I am then getting some person's view of what it is, not necessarily what it is.
Yes. I think there are some good study Bibles out there. There's one that I've often encouraged people to read that called the Life Application, and it's got some good stuff in there, but as Ed said, as long as you understand, it's not the Bible. It's what someone wanted you to know about the Bible, and you take it for what it is.
One of the best parts of that particular one is it asks questions instead of makes. It does make some statements, but it gives you lots of questions to think about with the text, not necessarily what you should think.
Yep. And I had a buddy of mine recently just buy that Bible, and I hear from him it now comes with an app that is constantly updated, and it's kind of a living kind of document. They constantly update it with the most common or the newest stuff. So, which I don't know. I haven't seen it, so I can't vouch for it, but he certainly liked it. So anyway, then the last the statement that they made in their question was, maybe this is the reason or for the entire question, is they made the statement that they didn't feel like they were at the place where they could be a part of a discipleship group yet. And I just thought that was an important thing for us to talk about. So that's not true.
Yeah, you're ready.
You are ready.
Well,
And maybe what we could do to help this person understand, and maybe for everybody watching, listening, is to help them understand what discipleship really is. When we talk about how we're going through it, it's not something that you have to attain a level of maturity to get to. It's, let's talk about what it is, I guess, first of all. Who wants to tackle that first?
Well, I think at a basic level, and we say this, in fact, when someone gets invited to discipleship, that it is just what Jesus invited people into. It's continually learning from Jesus how to do every part of our life as if he was the one living it, and then teaching other people to do the same, which was a key part of what he did. It wasn't just for him, it was for the world and for everyone. And so I think in particular, when it comes to reading the Bible and discipleship, I think it is the way to read the Bible, and this is what I mean by that is the earliest followers of Jesus, being that most of them were not literate, at least the people at the time were not as literate, the Bible was read in community. It was read to people, and people then, because they were a community, said, this is how we're going to live this out. And in fact, if you read, and hopefully once you move on from Jesus and the biographies of Jesus, I mean, not move on from Jesus, but you move on from the biographies of Jesus to the letters that are written, that's what those letters are. It's commentary on what Jesus had said, and Jesus' life is like, this is how you live it. They'd read it to one another. Often it was directly to some of the people, but then other churches would get them, and they go, well, how do we apply this in our church and in our setting? And so there obviously is a time and a place for personal Bible study, that I'm just reading it to connect with God, me and God, and I all of us do that, and that's an important part. But the other part of it is that I read something, and then I immediately go to other people, and we are now applying, not every single day, every single chapter that I'm reading is something that I'm going, oh, I got to do that today. But there are certainly things that when we now talk about the things we've read and the breadth of things that we've read, that someone goes, hey, you remember when it said to, serve one another? I don't think you're doing that with your wife right now, or I don't think you're doing that with your kids right now, and you can apply it. And so to that point, anybody can do that. Even somebody who doesn't even consider themselves a believer at this point, and even sure they believe all this, you can still read the text. Yeah. You can still engage with other people. And our belief, and really our prayer for you, is that through that process, if you're not a believer, that you are led to belief in Jesus and that in that kind of community. But certainly if you are a believer, there is no prerequisite course you have to take to be ready for it.
And that point you made, I've had this conversation with people, because I think a lot of people think of when they're reading the Bible and trying to understand it, they somehow think it is a lesser form of understanding the Bible when someone helps me understand it.
Sure.
And it's better if I can just read it. Like, for instance, people have come up to me and heard me or one of you guys preach, and they go, I never would have understood it that way had you not explained it to me, as if somehow it's bad.
Right.
That's a bad thing that I have to have someone help me. And I often want to say to them, me too.
Yeah.
I'll just say it this way. Sunday, Nathan, you taught, and I listened to you teach that passage, which I've read thousands of times. There were nuances that came out in your teaching that I have never gotten before, quite the way that God spoke to me. And I shouldn't walk away from that and say, oh no, I'm so deficient in my understanding. Right. It's, oh, thank God that you've turned the prism to now I see that color in a different way, and so now I can go and apply it in a different way. Now, I'll go and read that passage again at some point in discipleship, and I'll read it by myself. And And I guarantee you, God will say something in that moment,
Sure.
and I will get something else or a different nuance out of it. It's all valuable and it's all helpful. So I shouldn't feel as if because I can't do it all on my own, because like you said, it was never intended to be that way.
Yeah, I always distrust any reading that I get that I feel is unique.
Yeah.
So when I read something in the scripture and I read it and I go, wow, I don't think anyone I've ever read that anybody taught this before or thought this before, I go, you're probably wrong.
That's a problem
Yeah.
right there.
I should probably say that out loud to some other Christians and see if they think that's right, because if I think
Yes.
God isn't going to take me down some distinct path, I think it's one of the problems we have of thinking God's going to lead me this way. In the same verse, he says right to me, and he says left to you.
Right.
That's probably not.
Yes.
That's not true. There may be different degrees of right. Of
Yes.
I'm going to turn. You've got to do this particular thing in your life, but it does. They don't mean the Bible's. Again, I just will say it's not a puzzle. Most of the
Correct.
things in the Bible, are particularly the New Testament, they're pretty clear.
Yeah.
There aren't a lot. I mean, I agree. There were nuances I got out of Sunday. I thought the message was tremendous, but there wasn't anything there that I go, wow, that's a whole new way of
No.
seeing
Right,
something.
right,
And I know
right.
that's not what you were
That's
saying.
not what I meant, no.
That's not what you were saying at all. But I think a lot of people think I have to read the Bible. I have to get something that's particular to me,
Yeah.
or I didn't read it right.
It was more for me about the application.
That's right.
Right.
Of how I
right.
now go out and live this, which
Right.
we'll talk about in just a minute.
Sure.
But back to the discipleship thing, that is what we're doing together
Yes.
in these groups. And again, back to your original thing, there are people we've invited in this church into a discipleship group, and they're not even Christians yet,
Right.
because
We have people who don't even attend our church
Yes,
necessarily that
that's
have,
right.
that have been a part of it.
because all it is like you said, we're learning from Jesus how to do every part of our lives by immersing ourselves in community with others and learning about who he was and what he taught, and
practicing some of the
practicing
things we have
what he said to
practices that
taught. We do what he said to do, and that's everyone. When Jesus came up on the scene, he didn't walk around and say, "Now, are you ready for the kingdom of God?" He
Right.
said to every person, "The kingdom of God's here,
Yep.
and you're invited.
Right.
Come on and follow me." That's all we're doing
Right.
in discipleship.
In fact, I think you would probably get a lot more out of it if you would step into discipleship. People would be, and you'd be. One of the things that would happen is the ground would get leveled really quick. There are probably some people you think are way ahead of you, and when
Yes.
y'all started reading the Bible together, you would get, oh, I did understand that the same way they did. Whereas right now you think you're missing something, you're probably not missing as much as you think you're missing.
Yeah.
And you would do better off if you would do it in community.
Almost
So
it-
I
yeah.
encourage you, hey, reach out
Yes.
to, reach out to
Yes.
us. Reach out, help at community-christian.net.
Mm-hmm.
We are any of our personal emails. We will help you get in a group.
Yes.
We would love to do that. You are perfectly ready.
You reminded me of something, Ed. Almost every discipleship group I've ever been in, once I got in it with the guys and we started reading and they got to know me, they all kind of went, "Oh, I am closer to you than I thought I was. I thought you were way ahead of me." And you're right. It is a big leveling kind of thing.
Yes.
When we do it together.
100%.
So great encouragement to that person. I hope you'll do that.
Yes.
All right, moving on. Let's talk about Sunday, which we already sort of started
Yeah.
a little bit, but I want to get into mainly for those of you that saw the message with us on Sunday. Nathan, you ended with this practice that you encouraged us to do of mindfulness, which is the way we go about not worrying.
Right.
Is to remain in the moment, be mindful of things, and I'll just say. This is just personal for me. So I'm out doing my daily reading a couple days ago, and I'm sitting out on my deck. And first, I don't know why I decided to do it. Normally, I do it in a particular chair every day, but this day it was really nice outside, and I decided to go outside. And so I go out onto my deck, and it just hit me right in the middle of. Let me see if I can find it. Right in the middle of where I was doing my daily reading, and I just stopped for a second. And I had to record this. This is what I heard going on around me. I'll see if I can get it into the microphone. Hopefully you can hear that. And it was going on all around me. I had no idea while I was out there. And it reminded me of that story that you told of, the guy who's taking a run. And all of a sudden, it's like this world is going on around me, and I became mindful of it. So it was a really cool experience for me. So let's talk about how you live this way.
So I'll also add to that before
Okay,
he gets a chance to comment on that. I had the exact same experience on Monday. I mentioned last week that I'm doing this new prayer thing where I raise my hands, and so I'm now, after talking about that, I'm doing that in my neighborhood every day now, and I'm praying for I mentioned on the Friday video about praying for Bob, a burden for people, and openness and boldness, all that kind of stuff. And really, my mind is filled with all these thoughts. But as I'm walking, I was thinking, after I'd finished all that stuff I wanted to do with God, it just hit me again. Oh yeah, I'm supposed to be noticing. And all of a sudden, what had become a thing of me doing stuff, I just had that thought of I should be noticing. And I heard that almost exact same thing going on, and it got louder and louder. And it really was a super cool moment of, all the stuff that I've been trying to get God to do. God's already at work, and the birds are already up, and they're already doing all their stuff.
They're doing
and
just fine.
They probably didn't have to do all the prayer and all that stuff that I was doing to think I had to get God to do something. It was just all going on.
Yes. Very cool stuff. So, anyway.
Yeah, I think with the mindfulness stuff, we had all read a book, the same book, the Greg Boyd
our staff
book. Our staff had read it together that I took the quote out of, which is called Present Perfect is the name of that book. And I had heard, I've probably been listening to Greg I know you guys have too. We love his books. He does lots of kind of scholarly books, but then also this book's a little, I would just say accessible. It's a easy
practical.
read. Yeah, practical kind of thing. And so.
It's this thick.
Yeah,
it's
not
not
very
much.
big. Whereas often he has 2-volume works that are that thick, so each. And but anyway, I had heard him preaching about this for a while, and so I had really been. It had become aware to me that I wasn't doing this. That I thought of myself as someone who lived in the moment, and I didn't necessarily deal with anxiety or worry. But it became clear to me after a while mine were just different than other people's. I think lots of people worry about. Future events or things that might happen that are out of their control, and often for me it's what other people think, and I didn't see it that way. And so one thing that I had kind of learned in counseling, and it was kind of all dovetailing at the same time, was just this idea of really being aware of what my thoughts are and what's going on in my brain. And so I had kind of heard these sermons, and then luckily just recently we read this book, and I'd started reading this other book that I'm in the middle of right now called Holy Noticing, which is on the same kind of thing, which is where I got that phrase, holy noticing, from. And they talk a lot in these things of this idea that we are fractured beings most of the time, that we live, we actually only are existing in the present moment, but some of us, maybe the more anxious types, are really living in the future a lot. Other people, who might deal with lots of shame and guilt, they're living in their past moments and they can't move past. Other people I know, my wife is very much this way. It's not even a guilt about the past. It's almost a over romanticization, or however you want to say it, romanticizing the past, of saying, "Oh, that was so great. Remember when this was going on? Oh, I wish we could go back to that." And any moment that you're not in this present moment right now, where you're fully submerged by the love of God, then you're just prone to not be the whole version of yourself. And so for me, often the way that worked out was I would either be thinking back on something that I had said or done, and oh man, I bet that person's now thinking this or doing that, or thinking forward to some event I had going on and trying to prepare for it and doing things, and just not living just in the moment and being aware of anything going on. And so I think what mindfulness, as I'm trying to practice it, by no means I'm good about it, is these moments. I have alarms on my Fitbit here that go off to remind me to pray, but they also in that moment just remind me, center yourself back to this moment.
It was like then in the book you mentioned that Greg Boyd wrote, he in the margins of his book wrote the question over and over again, are you awake?
Right.
And it was supposed to wake you up to the fact that God's with you in this moment. Don't go too far ahead. Stay right where you are, which was helpful to me.
Yeah. So, I mean, I think that's the basic premise of it is that most of us are not living as much in the moment and as present as we could be. And what happens because of that is we're not existing in the kingdom of God. And I think, we've talked about this a lot lately, but I think when that became clear to me that was Jesus' primary message, was that the kingdom of God, the power and presence of God, it's available now, that it is a reality, that it is not me wishing for something that's coming at some point. It is a tangible reality that is existing in my midst, and I'm not seeing it. And understanding these things that we look at Jesus saying, like I'm teaching this tomorrow to some students, where Jesus says he heals a person, and then he's kind of questioning on what authority he has. I believe it's in John 5, and they say, well, what do you do this? And he says, I only do what I see the Father doing.
Yep.
And I don't know. I mean, I've heard many preachers preach on this, and many, and the way I read, we often read that as this kind of mystical, like Jesus just saying a thing. I think Jesus is talking about a practical reality. I look around the world and I see God at work, and God's with that, that person who can't walk, which is who Jesus, that's where he tells a person, get up and walk. Yep. And he sees them, and he just goes, oh, God's right, okay. And I know, obviously, we've talked about the Trinity and all that, and him being God, but, he's also fully man at that moment. He looks over, and he sees God, the Father, at work, and he goes, well, then I'll go do that too.
Yeah. Well, and I think a lot of his questions, and I remember doing a study years ago, Henry Blackaby, and that was his whole thing, was to not try to get God to join you, but to go do what God was already doing. A lot of the questions Jesus would ask people were, and it's really stuff we can do. We tend to look at that and think Jesus had some kind of mystical connection. He could just know God's at work over there. But Jesus would walk up to people who obviously were sick and go, hey, do you want to get well? And we think, what a stupid question. But sometimes it's better not to be well if you're making your money off of begging, and Jesus will say, I'm just testing the ground, see if God's at work here. Is your heart soft? Are you open?
Right.
If you're so, I'm willing to join in this with you, but if not, I'm okay for you to stay where you are. I think a lot of those kind of things we don't take it to look at that as I should be looking for where God is.
Right.
And we miss it because we're not in the moment. I have that happen to me all the time.
Oh, yeah, we all do.
I have planned out what I think should happen. I'm looking for indications that I'm on the right track instead of looking of what is happening and how I could participate in it.
Yeah.
I just think about the situation we're in right now, where we're unable to meet as a church, and pretty much the model of church that we've all trained in and accustomed to has been thrown out the window. And here we are in this moment, and honestly, it took us a few days, few weeks to actually ask that question. Okay, where's God working here?
Right.
And now I'm starting to. I was just listening to a podcast that you gave me to listen to that asked that question. It says, is God really trying to do something really amazing in his church through this? And if so, how can we get involved in it? Yeah. And I'm very excited about some of the answers that may be coming out of that. So,
well, and that for me, and this whole, I'll just say, trying to stay on the point of mindfulness, because that really attracts me. I've had that discussion so many times today of I don't want to miss what God's up to by trying to pull back to what I'm familiar with, what I'm comfortable with, what I think should be. But I'll just go back to that moment on Monday for me. I don't think of myself as an anxious, nervous person, and I don't think most people around me think, oh, Ed's constantly worried about what people think or those kind of things. But in that moment, as I'm trying to do my thing, and I thought I was really feeling okay, the sense of calm that came, and I don't mean in my spirit only, just my whole body. Yeah. There was almost this sense of okayness, which is a bad word, this sense of
the shalom.
There was a shalom.
The shalom.
This perfect peace that I just go, even in that moment, everything's all right, man. Listen to the birds have at it today, and look at how beautiful the sky is today, and look how the trees are doing, and everything's going exactly the way God wants it. Why would I not think other things in this world? God has a plan to get where he wants, and all I need to do is figure out what's my part in that? What's my little part to play in that?
Yep. Well, and when you talk about God's part of the plan, I think that's the central part of it is the reason we don't see, that it's a tiny little statement I made towards the end, which once again does not come from me. It's a Dallas Willard quote. But when you say the kingdom of God is the safest place, that God has made this place the safest place for me to be. The reason that even when you say it, I say it, and I in my own head is going, something
Not
about
really.
that's not right. Something about that's is because we don't perceive it that way. And the way Dallas would say it is because we're not doing the other part of that verse, which is Matthew 6, of seeking the kingdom first. And he talks, you see that all over the Bible where God keeps saying, seek after me, seek after me. And the part of that is the thing you talked about of Jesus asking, do you want to get well, is that God so respects our personhood and our free will. He does not force good things on us. There are good things that it's why I've talked to other people where they talk about prayer and they're like, so if I don't ask God for patience or something like that, God's not going to give me patience. If God wants me to have it, why wouldn't he just give it to me? And it's that same kind of thought of the reason we pray isn't to get God to do something God doesn't want to do. It's for God to go, oh, you do want this thing that I've been wanting to do. When I pray for people in my life who are not connected to God, it's not that God doesn't care about those people, and suddenly when I've said it, that God's like, well, now I can move. It's that God's understanding now, okay, we're going to cooperate on this thing, and there's a level that he's bringing it. And so when you talk about the kingdom, Jesus says, hey, come seek after me and seek after my kingdom, that when I do, and that becomes, God's plan becomes my top priority, then there is a safety in that. And it really is like being a child again, that, if I have a plan to go to Disney World when COVID is all done with, and I'm taking my daughters there, and I haven't told them where we're going. Lots of parents love to do, we're going to do a big surprise trip to Disney World, and I've got this whole great surprise, and this is the thing. You get in the car, and all your kids are going, where are we going? Where are we going? Where are we going? And then they see something down the road. Dad, let's stop there. Dad, let's stop there. And I keep saying, no, this is my plan. I need you to just get on board. My plan is better than your plan.
Dude.
And your plan's not a bad plan. Stopping over at the world's largest pie and wherever is not the worst plan.
Sounds like a good plan.
Yes.
It is a good one.
But if you understood, if you could see and say, I just trust that my dad is taking me somewhere that's good and it is for my good, then eventually I go wherever I end up, even if it means I miss out on something I really thought I wanted. It still is good for me. And there is a difference between hurt and harm in that being in the safest place does not mean that things don't happen to me that are bad, right? Jesus even says there's going to be enough trouble tomorrow to work. You got enough today for you to focus on.
Yeah.
But it's that it's not going to harm me. And by harm me, it means it's not going to take away from my ultimate good. That my ultimate good is secure in God and his kingdom. And, Jesus says that some of that even just feels very mystical, and it doesn't. But Jesus is saying this is a practical reality of life, that if you can begin to see that, and mindfulness brings us, I believe, in my experience, it brings me into that moment.
Yeah. So you brought us something today.
Sure, yeah, I thought
Along
this
those
might
lines.
be fun. So one of the books I've been reading about this, Holy Noticing, they provide some additional material.
Oh, is this a test?
Oh, yeah, we got a test.
He's handing out papers, guys.
So
Oh,
the
my
idea
goodness.
behind this is one of the things that mindfulness does is, and this is a very, he's a pastor, Charles Stone is his name, and he's pastor and author, and so he's very clever in the way he does stuff, but and you've probably heard things like this. Mindfulness takes me back to being a human being and not just a human doing. That most of us exist in a doing mode, not a being mode. And mindfulness allows me to get back into, I'm just existing in this moment with God. And so he gives this quote, he gives this quiz, really it's a self-assessment for you to take on yourself, and it's this kind of scale between am I in a doing mode or am I in a being mode. And so I thought these prompts were a good idea, but I thought maybe just briefly, because we tend to go on and on, but kind of talk about how this works for us. So the first scale is are you in an automatic pilot mode or a conscious choice mode? And then automatic pilot is your doing mode, and this is what it is. It's when you automatically react to the moment with your old habits. So you're in a moment and something happens. And one thing he mentioned in the book, which I think is great, is actually from it's an anonymous Holocaust survivor that said that real freedom exists between the moment of a stimulus and our reaction. And so when something happens, the real freedom is in the moment from the thing happens, and then I get to choose my reaction. That's where real freedom exists. So most often I have these old habits that when someone cuts me off in traffic, I've got a reaction that I do.
Right.
Am I in that mode, or am I being present in the moment and thus having a greater choice over our responses? And so obviously it's a scale. It happens all the time. But I would put most often in my life, I'm in automatic pilot mode. And I think, honestly, because it's the mode I'm in right now, young kids and parenting, so often it's after the moment you look back and you go, I knew that wasn't the right thing.
That's right.
I knew they were going to say that. I knew when I went in, because this was, a disciplinary situation. I knew I went in. I knew they were going to react this way. And it's just, the words start coming out your mouth before you even notice you're doing them.
I was going to say, for me, when I know that I'm more on the automatic pilot side is the level of anger that I can see in my life, because that usually is the predominating thing that comes out of me when I'm on automatic. My counselor put it to me this way. He said, you got to do everything with, he called it the 2-1 method. Mm-hmm. He said, you have 2 thoughts before you take 1 action. He said, something happens to you. He said, put 2 thoughts in your mind before you take the 1 action, whatever it is that you're going to do, and you're probably going to come out with a better action. And I've tried to do that most of the time.
Well, I can see the benefit of that is giving you a conscious choice, where when you only have 1 thought, it just feels like the only thing that's possible to do.
Who wouldn't do it that way?
That's right.
Sure.
But when you get that second thought in there, no, there's an alternative.
Right.
Somebody else might do something different. Why don't you try that? Or this, but again, you get to decide.
It's a
freedom.
conscious choice in that
Yep.
moment.
Cool.
So the second one is analyzing, which is on the doing mode, and sensing, like my senses. And what he gets here, and this is honestly a little counterintuitive to me when I first read it, which is being in my head, so analyzing things, versus being in touch with our God-given senses, which help us to attend to those around us in an open and positive way. And what he's ultimately getting to is, and I think this happens, often I live in my world up here. I'm not in touch with. Yeah. So Jason is talking in the podcast, and my first thought is, now, what do I want to say? Yeah. And what do I really think about what he just said? And
don't you think that's true? And I mean, you've read the book. I haven't. Is he also meaning, because I know that's true of me, that I live here a lot. Yeah. But I think even people that would say I'm a feelings-oriented person, they don't realize that that's also here. It's not somewhere else, that they're sensing something.
Yes.
It is an automatic reaction. It takes them here. They're analyzing it through the emotions.
That's right.
Yeah, so.
That's right. Well, and we'll get to this in a minute when we get to it, but he really makes the point that the analyzing things is actually the problem. That, and I'll mention this in a second, but he talks about you need to stop thinking of your thoughts as solid, meaning just because it popped in my head, that's a good idea, and seeing them as mental events that just happened. I felt something, or I thought something. That doesn't mean there's any truth to it. Right. I just thought it, I felt it. And the sensation part that he gets to is that I'm with this person, and I can sense Jason, and instead of getting into this critical, judging, analyzing mode, I need to be with Jason, and I need to experience that. So you put yourself on a scale. The next one is striving, which is doing mode, to accepting. And what he said is there's a part where I try to get out of the current moment versus appreciating the moment for what it is. This is the one where I think I fail the most, which is there is some future moment that I wish I could be living in. And often so we've been talking about all the things we're trying to think about and change as a church and all that kind of stuff. I often want to just get to that end point or get to the start point of it, because often you're in the planning stage. But instead of just accepting, this is where I'm at right now. And there may be no forward momentum in any of this. But this moment is good. It's blessed by God because I'm in the moment with him. So I think that's really the point.
And you really need to do that when you find yourself in a negative moment, when something bad happens to you. I've heard the phrase practicing radical acceptance. When something happens, you as fast as you can get to that place where you go, this is what I have. This is where I'm at. Whatever it is, and I'm going to accept, and then move from there and respond to that. You're better off. So go ahead.
And then the next part is this part I've already mentioned. Your thoughts are solid and real. That's a doing mode. And thoughts are mental events. And the reason that I think one's a doing and one's a not is those of us who are very reactionary kind of people, me sitting back and thinking about, okay, this thought popped in my head, it doesn't mean anything. If my main goal in life is to take action on things, then my thoughts must be solid. Because the first thought I think, then that's the action I must take, because I thought that thought. And it gets me back to that automatic pilot mode of, well, of course I think this is the only logical conclusion to do, and not having almost what you said, the 2-1 method, where I had the thought, now I need to just briefly, it doesn't mean I sit and analyze it like we're talking about of living in my head, but I just have the second thought of going, wait, is that real? When she said that, Is that really?
It's thinking about your thoughts, which
Right.
is the one thing that human beings, that makes us unique. We're the only creature that can think about our own thoughts.
Right.
And that's what it's talking about.
And I think also to your point you made earlier when we say thoughts, our feelings aren't necessarily thoughts in the way we think, but our perception of our feelings are the thoughts. And so sometimes I feel something, and I remember really early on, I don't remember if it was you or if it was Mom, because I was often doing things on stage, and this has stuck with me forever, when I would feel nervous energy and get what you might call stage fright. One of you said, don't think of it as being nervous, think of it as being excited. And I remember being a young kid thinking that, and literally, I have never had stage fright since, because I always go in my head, the reason I have these butterflies and this nervous, I'm actually just excited about doing it, so this is a great thing that I get to be a part of. And it is that my perception of the thing my body is doing is actually what we would call our emotions.
Right.
There is a feeling, a
Right.
biological feeling I'm feeling. The emotion part is the thought.
Right.
Yep.
And so understanding this is just a mental event that is happening. It doesn't actually mean that what I'm feeling is necessarily real.
Okay.
So then the next one is avoidance versus approach. And this one I think is huge. This has been one of my problems my whole life, is trying to avoid certain emotions and thoughts. And that's your avoidance problem, normally what we would consider negative emotions, versus openly approaching them while minimizing commentary and judgment about them. So the approach part is, I felt something, I feel fear, or I feel anger, or I feel sadness. Some of us think of that as a negative emotion. And instead of going, I shouldn't be angry right now. I shouldn't be angry. A good person, one of my daughters often says, a good person, it's not good to be mad. And understanding, no, it's okay to be mad.
It is.
And approaching that and saying, why am I mad?
Yeah.
Why am I mad? Why am I scared? Why am I sad? And there's no judgment to it. All of that exists in the same thing. And then the next one is mental time travel, which is what we talked about on Sunday.
About that.
That's a doing mode versus remaining in the present moment. So not living in a past guilt, not living in the future. And then finally, and this one's been really hard for me. This is where I'm at right now. Depleting activities versus nourishing activities. That the doing mode is, I want to do things where I can accomplish, but all of us know there's a level that nourishes me, but there's also a level that just depletes me.
Right.
That I am doing, and I'm trying to please people, or I'm trying to get things done, or I'm just that, and I come home and I'm exhausted. Now, I come home and I'm tired, and that was a good day of work. And then there's other days I come home and I'm like, I don't want to do that again.
Yep.
But as opposed to nourishing activities that may not accomplish anything, and allow me to live in this present moment. And so
I think you should put a copy of this up where people can see it. So
I don't
put a link in the description.
In the description.
People
Sure.
Can we do that?
We can do that.
We will do that. We will put a link in the description where all the other stuff is, where you can send questions, you can subscribe. It'll be right there on the description. So
I think it's great.
put a link to that document, and you can take a look at it. So
And it'll say, download this before you listen to the episode.
yes, and then they won't know to do that.
They won't know.
They won't read it.
Yeah.
But that's okay. You can get this later.
That light is
Your
strobing.
light is flickering.
I'm gonna
It's like
fix
bothering
that while you go on to the next
That
part.
light is
Okay.
strobing.
It's like bothering me. So
Yeah.
all right, now I'm distracted. Okay, so last thing, and this is the fun part. It used to be called the top 5.
Now it's called something.
It's called top whatever we want to do.
It's called everybody gets a shot to do something.
Yeah.
Free for
Everybody's
all.
getting something.
Well, we're being in the moment with Jason
Everybody's
right here.
getting something.
I ain't worried. This is a safe place for me to be. I hope it's a safe place for me to be.
Yeah, it will be. It's fine. No, I was so Ed, you inspired me last week. If you didn't watch the podcast, whatever you do. If you didn't tune in, Ed quizzed us on just questions, random
Yes.
questions. that he
Random
wanted us to-
questions.
Yeah, which I enjoyed. So I started, thinking, and he was asking my opinion on some stuff, and there's been something that I've had a strong opinion on ever since this virus thing has happened. And it has been my experience with all the ways the restaurants are changing.
All right.
And if you haven't, I'm doing lots of takeout these days.
I am
Okay.
too.
And I'm sure you guys are
Oh,
as
yeah,
well.
that's
And
right.
my wife, we have found ourselves sitting down having lots of conversations about how well the restaurant industry is doing at meeting our needs with
All right.
the takeout that we have had. So I'm wondering, what has been your your best experience, because everybody's had to change and everybody's
Sure.
had to do it a different
What's
way.
the best?
What's the best experience you've had with that whole world these days? Because I've had a couple and I've been really impressed. I'm like, man, they're better now than they were before.
Interesting.
I have had none that fit that category.
Really?
I have not had one experience that didn't make me think, if these people don't get opened up, they're going out of business.
Well, that's interesting.
All right, so tell me some of yours, because I had a couple that I thought
Have you?
That was so mine is I have a large family. I have 6 people in our house, and so a lot of these places now are doing family meals.
Yes.
Which has been wonderful. So like Zaxby's recently has like this chicken finger meal, and O'Charlie's has about like 7 that are different. You can get a pasta bowl, you can get a chicken salad,
Very
you can
cool.
get I've got 4 girls under the age of 8, so they all, or under the age of 9, I should say, and they all love chicken fingers. So we often get lots of chicken finger stuff. Popeye's been running a lot of specials.
Yes,
And,
sir.
All those places. So and then like Moe's now has what we all had the Willie's Mexicana Grill
Okay.
taco box for our
The
staff
staff
meeting.
did. The
We
staff
did.
We did
that as a
That's
staff.
right.
And Moe's now has a taco
have
box,
one.
which is nice. So all those I would say has been. I
I'm
told.
guessing Chipotle does too. Then.
I'm sure.
Yeah,
Well, I don't know that
probably.
I've ever been to Chipotle. So
I will say the couple that I've had that have been the best, one you mentioned was we had staff lunch here, and I was in charge of taking care of that. And I used the Popeyes app and had them deliver it. That was the most seamless, easiest.
Well, and it was good chicken. There
was
is no
great.
doubt. It was really good.
It was on time. Everything was like just perfect. I didn't have to wait in line for
Yep.
anything. That's the best delivery situation I've had so far. But the other night we were going to we were going to pick up pizza at Domino's, and the reason we don't have it delivered is because my daughter's like begging me to go drive somewhere. She's like, Dad, can I drive? Can I drive? She just wants to get out of the house.
Yeah,
I'm
Sure.
like,
I get
sure, go get some pizza. So I ordered it up on the app, and as she's pulling in, you check in on the app and you say, I'm here. And literally, she said she pulls into the parking lot. A person walks out the door and then like calls my name because it's under my name. They go, are you Jason? And she goes, yeah, I'm here for Jason. And they just like hand her the pizza, and she just pulls out of the drive. And it was like drive-through on steroids.
Wow.
She said she just pulled in, got it, and she was out of there. I was like,
Well, now,
that's so
those
cool.
kind of things, I don't get a lot of the family meals because it's just me and Becky, so there's not any of that for us to get. But when we have grandchildren at our house, we often are going. Their parents don't buy them Happy Meals, so we're going to buy Happy Meals for grandkids. And the McDonald's near our house, I will say, has always been on top of it. I know people are down on McDonald's, but the McDonald's near me, I'll sit in my chair at home, order it on the thing. They say, check in when you get to the restaurant. I check in, go through the drive-thru, give them my number, and when I pull up, they're handing it to me.
I know. That's cool.
That one has been really on top of it. I haven't
Yeah.
been to all McDonald's.
That's
I know
right.
everybody's
That's
not
right.
the same. That one has been
Yep.
on top of it.
Yeah, I've just noticed that some of them have figured out this customer service thing
Sure.
in a really cool. Like you mentioned Zaxby's the other night. We were driving through to pick up, and they got a section where you park, and we parked our car, and there's a phone number, and you call the phone number, and they say, what parking space are you in, and you tell them because they're all numbered, and they just. As soon as I called them, they were walking it out
Yeah.
to me, and it's just bam, it's right there. And then what was even better was there's a big long line wrapped around the restaurant at the drive-through window, and I got to bypass all of that.
yeah,
Ah.
we did that too.
Yeah, so
good.
that was even better. So anyway, I guess it's showing I'm eating way too much takeout.
Yeah, you have a lot of opinions about the takeout.
That is a problem for me right now.
Keeping
so.
businesses going, that's important. Someone's got to keep ordering Zaxby's.
I have told. I'll put this on the podcast just to keep up a Waffle House. I love Waffle House. Everybody
you
knows
do.
I love
I know
Waffle
you do.
House, and so I have still gone to Waffle House even when they wouldn't let me go in and eat, and it's always just been great curbside thing. And
I'm
my
sure.
favorite waitress there, which I won't use her name, but I just love her. She told me how much she loves the being at the curbside, and when I asked her why, she said it's because it's the first time since 2004 I've been able to give people food while smoking a cigarette.
And that's why you go to Waffle House.
That's why you go to Waffle House.
I told her it makes perfect sense.
It
I don't
does.
blame her.
Awesome.
There you go.
Well, hopefully soon we'll actually be able to sit in a restaurant real soon.
Yeah,
We'll see.
that'd be wonderful.
I sat in Waffle House last week.
Well, there
Okay,
you
so they're
go.
starting to open
Oh
up.
yeah,
Open
Waffle
up.
House.
Okay.
Yep.
I know there's a lot of opinion about that, but we're getting
Waffle
there.
House.
We're getting there. We're going to
Exactly.
open up some stuff, and it's actually going to happen. So, okay. All right. Well, that's all I got on the list today. So, you guys got any parting words?
Bye.
That's
Yeah.
it.
That's a good parting word.
Yeah, man.
See y'all.
See you
Sayonara.
guys.
See you later.